Beijing responds to the new U.S. tariffs that kick in today by imposing an extra 84% on all American imports starting tomorrow. Donald Trump triples tariffs to 90% on low-value packages from mainland and Hong Kong. And the revised $2 transport subsidy scheme is now expected to roll out in April next year, 5 months ahead of schedule. Good evening. You are now watching Cable News. I'm Evelyn Bai. In the latest developments of a tit-for-tat trade war, Beijing announced additional import tax of 84% on U.S. goods in response to Trump's 104% tariff and has filed a complaint with the World Trade Organization. Separately, in a high-profile meeting, President Xi Jinping pledged to strengthen strategic bonds with neighboring nations and boost supply chain ties. Xu Yun tells us more.
In Beijing, President Xi has called for building a community with a shared future with neighboring countries and striving to open new ground for China's neighborhood work. His remarks came after a high-profile Central Working Conference on neighborhood diplomacy, marking his first public speech since the escalation of a U.S.-China trade war. The meeting also emphasized the need to deepen economic integration by boosting connectivity and strengthening industrial and supply chain cooperation. Meanwhile, China's State Council Information Office issued a 28,000-character white paper on China-U.S. economic and trade relations, stressing that China-U.S. trade relations are mutually beneficial and cooperative. The paper reiterated Beijing's stance of not actively seeking trade surpluses and its commitment to resolving disputes through fair dialogue and mutually advantageous cooperation. It also criticized the isolationist and coercive nature of U.S. tariffs that run counter to the principles of the market economy and multilateralism. A spokesperson for the Ministry of Commerce slammed the U.S. for using tariffs as a tool to exert extreme pressure and pursue selfish gains, highlighting that tariffs cannot solve its own problems, but instead escalate the risk of U.S. economic decline. Earlier, Trump said U.S. is taking in a fortune in tariffs, adding that China is going to strike a deal with them.
Today it was announced that China is reducing its currency. Did you see that? Big. They're manipulating their currency today as an offset against the tariffs. Not supposed to do that. The game isn't supposed to be played that way. I think they'll make a deal at some point. China will. They want to make a deal. They really do. They want to make a deal. They just don't know how to get it started because they're proud people.
Cheryl Yun, Cable News.
Separately, small packages shipped from mainland and Hong Kong to the United States worth less than $800 will be slapped a levy 3 times that of the original rate to be imposed on May 2nd. According to an amendment on reciprocal tariffs published by the White House, the new rate on low-value packages, or so-called de minimis, which were originally exempted from import tax, will be 90% of their value, up from the previously announced 30%, or $25 per postal item. The per postal item fee will hike to $75 after May 2nd, and $150 from June 1st onwards. In other local news, Welfare Secretary Chris Sun announced that the $2 flat rate come 80% discount transport subsidy scheme will launch in April next year, 5 months earlier than originally planned, saving an additional $260 million. Xu Yun reports.
After discussions with Octopus Cards Limited and transport operators, Sun expressed confidence that the revised scheme can come into force in April 2026. Under the changes, most trips for the elderly and disabled will remain at $2, but fares exceeding $10 will be capped at an 80% discount. The new measure will replace the existing $2 scheme, which has been running since 2012. Sun said bringing forward the launch by 5 months is expected to save an additional $260 million. Meanwhile, the 240-journey monthly cap will be rolled out separately in April 2027.
好難理解，主席，即係做一個嘅方案係要需要1年。
Election Committee sector lawmaker Carmen Can raised concerns over the one-year preparation period, questioning why the rollout requires so much time. Sun explained that the transition involves upgrading over 10,000 fare gates, stressing that the timeline ensures a smooth implementation. He also defended the decision to phase in the discount and journey cap separately, saying that it is more cost-effective. Once fully implemented, the government expects the new measures to save $680 million in the 2027-28 financial year alone. Cheryl Yun, Cable News.
Social worker Jackie Chen was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison today for her involvement in the 2019 anti-government protests, after a retrial found her guilty of inciting violence during a demonstration in Wanchai. Quentin Yang has more details.
Chen, 48, was convicted of participating in a riot on August 31, 2019, when protesters clashed with the police. The district court classified the case as among the most severe riots. The judge wrote that Chen, then a member of the social worker group Groundwork, used a loudspeaker to shout warnings at the police while standing among demonstrators who were throwing bricks and petrol bombs. Her actions emboldened violent protesters, the judge concluded, aligning her culpability with those directly engaged in violence. Citing the protest's large scale, the judge imposed a 5-year starting sentence, referencing precedents like the Tony Chong and Joshua Wong cases, which stressed punishment over rehabilitation for mass unlawful acts. Despite Chen's clean record and low reoffending risk, the court dismissed these as irrelevant under its strict deterrence stance. Still, her sentence was cut by 15 months due to mitigating factors, including mental strain during retrial, cooperation with prosecutors, and the looming loss of her social worker license, a double punishment, the judge noted. Originally acquitted in 2020, Chen faced a retrial after prosecutors won an appeal in 2023. 3 co-defendants who pleaded guilty received lighter sentences of 2 years and 5 months each. Quentin Yang, Cable News.
Commuters taking MTR's Tongchong line should note that next Saturday, the last train between Tongchong and Hong Kong stations will depart earlier, around 11 p.m. On the late night of April 19th, the city's sole railway operator will conduct its second turnout installation as part of the extension project for 2 new stations, Tongchong East and Tongchong West. Railway turnout is a device that enables trains to switch from one track to another. The track diversion work involved 4 turnout installations, with the first successfully completed last October. MTR's project execution manager Li Ka-leung said the entire project needs to be carried out in phases, and expressed confidence that, given the success of the first installation, the second will be conducted smoothly. The last train departing from Tongchong will leave at 11:01 p.m., while the final train from Hong Kong to Tongchong will depart at 11:07 p.m. and leave Sunny Bay at 11:28 p.m. To accommodate affected passengers, the MTR will provide free shuttle bus services, and train operations will resume normal the following day. The remaining 2 turnout installations are scheduled for 2026 and 2027. As the foundation work is largely completed, the Tongchong East station is expected to finish in 2029 as scheduled. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said during a high-profile visit to Panama that America and Panama will work together to take back control of the Panama Canal from Chinese influence, sparking fiery rebuke from Beijing amid escalating tensions in the geopolitical competition. Quentin Yang reports.
At the inauguration of a U.S.-funded dock, Hegseth accused the Chinese companies of controlling critical infrastructure linked to the canal, enabling surveillance activities that undermine the security, prosperity, and sovereignty of both nations.
China did not build this canal. China does not operate this canal. And China will not weaponize this canal. Together with Panama in the lead, we will keep the canal secure and available for all nations.
The visit, the first by U.S. Defense Secretary since the canal's handover to Panama in 1999, signaled shifting alliances. Hegseth praised the Panama president Jose Raul Mulino's withdrawal from China's Belt and Road Initiative earlier this year and aligning with Washington on security goals. The two nations pledged renewed military cooperation, including fast-track U.S. naval passage through the canal. The Chinese embassy in Panama swiftly fired back, calling the claims baseless fear-mongering and accusing Washington of sabotaging Sino-Panamanian ties for self-interest. In a sharply worded statement, the embassy stressed that China has never managed, operated, or interfered in canal affairs. In a separate development, Panama has opened an investigation into a contract granted to Hong Kong's C.K. Hutchinson, which holds leases for ports at both ends of the canal, after an audit by the country's Comptroller General accused the company of depriving Panama of more than $1.3 billion. Quentin Ya, Cable News.
Ukraine said two individuals accused of being Chinese nationals allegedly fighting with Russian forces were captured in its Donetsk region, a claim Beijing swiftly rejected as groundless, adding they are investigating the issue. Quentin Yang again has the story.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shared an interrogation footage on social media, showing one detainee speaking a mix of Mandarin, English, and Russian while gesturing to describe battlefield conditions. Zelensky said Ukrainian troops engaged 6 Chinese fighters in the region and captured 2. The detainees were identified through passports and personal documents seized by Ukrainian forces, according to Zelensky. He contrasted the situation with North Korean soldiers reportedly deployed in Russia's Kursk region, stressing that the Chinese nationals were captured inside Ukraine. Zelensky has urged Beijing to respond and instructed Ukraine's foreign minister to seek clarification from China's acting charge d'affaires in Kyiv. In response, Beijing has denied any state-sponsored involvement in the war. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jian said the Chinese side is verifying relevant information with the Ukrainian side. Regarding Zelensky's allegation that additional Chinese citizens are aiding Russia in the war, Lin dismissed the claim as groundless, urging Ukraine to appropriately recognize China's efforts and constructive role in pursuing a political resolution to the Ukraine crisis. Quentin Ya, Cable News.
Shares in Hong Kong rebounded after a roller coaster session, which saw the city's benchmark index briefly dipped below the 20,000 mark. Meanwhile, a record-breaking $35.5 billion of southbound capital inflow was logged. The Hang Seng Index clawed back from an early 800-point plunge to close 136 points higher at 20,264. Reclaiming the critical 20,000 mark and its 250-day moving average after a wild session that saw swings of nearly 1,200 points. The benchmark index surged on a record $35.5 billion in capital inflows from the mainland and a stronger Hong Kong dollar, which hit a near 4-year high. Markets opened sharply lower after the U.S. announced 104% tariffs on Chinese imports, sparking a 600-point drop at the open. Sentiment reversed by midday, however, as Beijing signaled potential economic support measures and released a white paper pledging equal dialogue with Washington. The rebound lifted tech stocks, with the Hang Seng Tech Index rising 2%. Xiaomi surged 7%, while Alibaba edged up 1% to narrowly hold above $100. Regional markets diverged, with mainland's Shanghai and Shenzhen indices rising 1%, while Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan fell up to 5%. Onto the weather now. Mainly cloudy with 1 or 2 showers, misty in the morning and at night. Rather warm with sunny intervals during the day. Temperatures will range between 22 to 26 degrees. That's our news tonight. I'm Evelyn Bai. Thanks for watching and good night.